What's up? My name is Anna. I am now a second-year student-registered nurse anesthetist. I'm a former travel nurse. I started off making content on TikTok. I now co-own a nurse education company, Confident Care Academy. We have a podcast that y'all should all check out. I run that with Chrissy CRNA. But mostly, I am a full-time nurse anesthesia student. And today we're talking about 10 lessons that I've learned throughout my first year of nurse anesthesia school. Starting off really practical, the very first lesson that I have is don't buy books ahead of time. If you've been a college student and you've finished nursing school, this is going to mostly hold true for graduate school as well. In terms of all of your books and everything that you need to buy, wait to hear from the previous classes what they recommend. They may even have a shared resource. They may sell their old books to you. They might not require the most recent book as of the last 5 months or so. Wait till you hear from the outgoing class what to do as far as books go. I will also say do not purchase board preparation materials on your own. I do recommend Apex Anesthesia. That is a video for a different day. But you're going to want to make sure that you are going in with all of your classmates and you're getting that group discount. So before you start CRNA school, do not spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on textbooks. Odds are there's going to be a resource that is shared with your other students from previous classes. Lesson number 2, do not spend all of your saved money on tuition. Save that for living expenses. Of course, there will be some variation. Potentially you are in a military program. Potentially you have a partner or a spouse who is paying for some of your tuition. Potentially you have some savings from previous jobs. Potentially you have parents who are helping you out. All of that being said, that's not the case for most people. And what I will say is this: you will get cost of living loans. You will get tuition loans. It is almost always in your best interest to use any of your savings to cover your cost of living expenses. This is really too much for one video. We have an entire podcast on the Confident Care Academy podcast that goes into a deep dive on the different student loans that are available, on different forgiveness programs, and on different other scholarships. So go check out the Confident Care Academy podcast. That will be linked in the description below. This is a deep dive with myself and Chrissy CRNA. She is currently on track to have over $150,000 of loans forgiven. So if that is something you're interested in, I think that's a podcast episode that is absolutely going to help you out. All of that being said, something that students or aspiring CRNAs don't often realize is that you do get cost of living loans given to you during CRNA school. Of course, that is money that you have to pay back. However, the cost of living loans that are allotted to you might be lower than the average cost of living in a given area. For example, from my personal experience, I get about $25,000 in loans to live on a year. My tuition is a separate situation that is also covered in student loans, but I get $25,000 a year to live on. I live in a metro area. I live in a city. My rent is closer to $2,000. So that being said, 25 grand doesn't cover my cost of living, right? I have external sources of income. I run an education business. That being said, if you have any savings, I would save that money for your cost of living expenses, not for your tuition. Again, this topic is way too long for a 10-minute YouTube video. Go check out the podcast episode. We really do a deep dive over at the Confident Care Academy podcast over on everything that has to do with student loans. But that being said, if you have any savings, spend that on cost of living, not on tuition. Lesson number 3. If you are in a front-loaded program, consider travel nursing. This will have a lot of variability. Some CRNA programs want for you to stay at a staff nursing job until you matriculate, which means you start in the program. If you have a program that allows for you to travel nurse, I would heavily consider travel nursing. Another caveat is that if you are one of the very few people who gets in with the minimal experience, you might benefit from staying in the staff nursing position until you start CRNA school. But let's say that you're the average matriculant with 3 to 4 years of experience at the time that you're starting grad school. This is when I would really heavily recommend looking into taking a travel job that is even local to your area. You might not want to move. That's okay. You can still take a travel nursing position within your town. That being said, you're not going to get the tax-free stipends because you will be a local traveler. This gets a little bit complicated. Fortunately, I have a video about that. Check out this video here. The 50-mile rule does not exist. And that's just talking about taking local travel assignments near your tax home. Most hospitals, like the very short abbreviated version, is that almost every single travel nursing job that is listed at a hospital could also be taken by a local travel nurse. You're just not going to qualify for those tax-free stipends, and you're going to get a higher hourly rate. That higher hourly rate can sometimes be up to triple what you're making as a staff nurse. So once you get into CRNA school, this is when I would really recommend starting to save up a little bit of cash to fill in the gaps in between those 3 years where you're not going to be working. I would say look heavily at travel nursing if you are in a position where you can do that. After I got into CRNA school, I got into CRNA school in 2021 in October, I believe. I was already travel nursing at the time. That's a whole separate episode about whether you should be a travel nurse at the time of application. The scene has kind of changed. We're no longer in COVID crisis anymore. So the acuity that travel nurses is taking is often lower. That's a whole complicated situation. And again, we have a podcast episode about that. But I got into CRNA school in October of 2021. And then from that point, I was in San Jose. I then took a travel contract in San Diego. I saved some money in San Diego. I then went to per diem jobs in Portland and in Seattle and in Denver and in Salt Lake City. So this is something that I would really recommend that y'all look into just to save a little bit of money. One last note before we hop off of the travel nursing thing. You get your last student loan disbursement this beginning of the semester before you graduate, and credentialing as a nurse anesthetist takes usually 2 to 5 or 6 months. So let's say for me, I graduate in January of 2025, or sorry, my last student loan disbursement is in January of 2025. I won't start working as a CRNA until probably October of 2025. That means your last student loan disbursement is supposed to last you from January till October. That's really where you want that travel nursing money to come in. So I recommend taking a travel nursing job as soon as you get into CRNA school, unless your school doesn't allow it, which those are rare cases. But broadly, I say once you're in CRNA school, consider travel nursing. And then an additional caveat in addition to that is I would recommend looking into PACU jobs as well. I have videos on the playlist linked below about PACU nursing. I think it's a really beneficial thing to add into your skill set as a student registered nurse anesthetist. You're really learning how to do PACU handoff. You're interfacing with the anesthesia team, and you're seeing a lot more less acute surgeries. So if you're working in the ICU, you're seeing really, really sick patients all the time. Once you get into CRNA school, if you can spend the next 6 months or so working at that more relaxed pace and then taking care of a broader range of patients and interfacing with the anesthesia team, it's a win for burnout. It's a win for your wallet if you're doing it as a travel nurse, and it's a win for exposure to the anesthesia and the intra and post-operative state. So I say once you're in CRNA school, get a travel job that is local to your area and it's in PACU. That's just my 2 cents. Tip number 4 is take that money that you're making as a travel nurse and use it to update your technology. I don't think that you need to go crazy with it, but you should have a laptop that has plenty of storage and is updated. And I will say that having an iPad is nice. Not everybody uses them, but this is a situation where you're going to just want to update your chargers, update your laptop. Consider also getting a separate desktop monitor. I don't use it, but some SRNAs really swear by it. And I would also say noise canceling headphones. This is really nice. So update your technology, invest in your education. And then this is, again, where I would recommend looking at a travel job to make a little bit more money, to buy a new laptop, an iPad, and noise canceling headphones. Again, I don't recommend buying all of your books. I don't recommend buying board preparation materials at this time. But I will say getting the technology pieces. And also Vargo Anesthesia is a great app to buy. I think it's $80 as of 2023 when I'm filming this. So go ahead and just buy the laptop, buy the headphones, buy any technology things that you've been wanting to buy, and then use your travel nursing money to invest in those educational resources for you. Lesson number 5, CRNA school stops for no one. CRNA school is a non-stop 36-month full-time commitment, and personal life stuff will come up during CRNA school, and you are going to have to get through it. I went through a divorce in semester 3 at the end of year 1 of CRNA school. While I was in the process of moving out, had asked if I could take an exam on a separate day as I was in the process of moving out and getting divorced. And that was not an accommodation that was able to happen because it's required that all students take the exams on the same day. This is a sort of situation that you need to be aware of going into CRNA school. You will have personal stuff come up. You are going to experience loss. You're going to experience changes. You're going to experience grief. And you're also going to experience growth. And at the end of the day, anesthesia school is a commitment, and you are going to get through it. Getting through difficult life stuff in the middle of also being a full-time anesthesia student is such a grueling experience, but you will come out the other side. I want for y'all to know that what you're signing up for is a massive commitment, but it's a commitment to yourself, and it's a commitment to your patients. And at the end of the day, you do have what it takes. If you've made it here, you have what it takes, and you're going to pull through it. That really leads into lesson 6. You're going to overcome every single obstacle in your path, and you're going to meet every single expectation that is set for you. Anesthesia school is similar. It's really similar to nothing else you've ever experienced. The learning is like a 90-degree angle. You take what you have experienced as an ICU nurse and seeing extremely difficult patient scenarios and being a leader in your unit, and you are thrown into a scenario where you are expected to learn this massive volume of information and then turn around and then be the person who is responsible for a patient under general anesthesia at the end of the day, and respond to airway calls, rapid responses, code blues, OB and postpartum hemorrhages and emergencies. You are going to rise to the occasion, and you do have what it takes to be the clinician that is going to be a resource for the people around you. Every single semester, there has been this massive learning curve where the first 3 to 4 weeks of the semester, it feels like we're just at this full out sprint in order to meet the expectations that are set for us. To get through CRNA school at my program, you have to maintain an 82% average. In my core anesthesia classes, there's not buffer grades in that. That's just exams alone. So you have to maintain a high B, low A, high A average on the exams alone, which are comprehensive and often cumulative. And you have to just make it happen. At the end of the day, you have to learn how to trust yourself, because you will make it happen. You are going to meet the expectations that are set for you. And in a way, you're going to learn to appreciate the opportunity to be pushed like this, because this is not something that you would do on your own. You wouldn't push yourself this hard outside of anesthesia school. And that goes back to anesthesia school being a catalyst. CRNA school is going to accelerate your growth and knowledge, and it's also going to expose the weaker points of your life. And that goes back to anesthesia school stops for no one, and you're going to have to get through it, right? So with it being an accelerator, you're going to grow and change and mature into a person that you really won't recognize from the very beginning of CRNA school. But the person that you are going to be at the end is going to be a person who you would want to take care of your family in the operating room in their most difficult times. Lesson number 7 is that the goal is to no longer be an A+ student. This will be hard because every single person who gets into CRNA school likely is type A. They definitely have high grades, and they are a high performing nurse at their given specialty. Everyone who gets into CRNA school is a highly qualified critical care nurse who is smart as a whip and has good grades and has a thirst for knowledge. In anesthesia school, you are no longer expected that your primary job is grades alone. Your primary job is the patient on the table in the operating room. This is especially going to become very difficult for people who are in integrated programs. If you are in an integrated program, you are taking your core didactic classes while you are in the operating room. If it comes down to it, at the end of the day, yes, you have to maintain your 82, sometimes 85% average in classes to remain in the program, but your ultimate responsibility is to the patient on the table. If you are cutting corners the night before so that you can get a 97 instead of an 88 on an exam, and you're under preparing for your cases in the OR, your priorities are out of line. And this is hard because we have for so long attached our self-worth to the grades that we see on our transcripts at the end of the day. But for most of us, CRNA school is end game. This is your terminal degree. You are not going back to grad school after CRNA school. So your goal should be to be the best clinician that you can be. And yes, understand the material. Yes, do deep dives. But if it's the difference between making an 88% and a 94%, and then you're spending less time preparing for your cases the next day, you better be preparing for your cases the next day. And that is a huge mindset shift because all of us have attached our self-worth to grades for arguably too long. So number 8 is that you have to incorporate science-based study tips. You are going to simply drown in the material if you are using the same techniques that you were using in nursing school or in a previous undergrad. You have to utilize evidence-based practice in not only the operating room, but also in your studying life. So we have a whole podcast episode about this. Check that out in the link in the description below. We compared at least 5 different research articles or research meta-analysis on how to study in a time-effective manner. Spoiler alert, highlighting is not going to get you anywhere. And also flashcards that are just over regurgitation are also not going to help you. Definitely just check out that podcast episode because honestly, that's too much to get into here, but you have to use science-based study tips. Lesson number 9 is that as a beginner in the operating room, one of your biggest roles is to be a clear communicator. I am a beginner student registered nurse anesthetist. I think at this point I've placed 3 or 4 ET tubes and 4 LMAs. I am a beginner. I still have to pace myself through the anesthesia machine check. I am brand new and I feel like I'm all thumbs in the operating room. One of the biggest things that we can do at this stage is learn how to communicate where we are to our preceptors, because at the end of the day, it is okay to be a beginner, but the people who are teaching us need to know that the patient on the table is safe at the end of the day. How can I, as a learner, put the preceptor in a position where they feel comfortable, not only giving me feedback and correction, but also comfortable that I'm able to verbalize what my understanding is before I am executing a task? And this is leading into kind of part B of this, which is in anesthesia school, they want to see that we tried before we ask for an intervention. So they want to see that we looked up the case the night before. They want to see that we did preparation, that we looked it up, that we gave an effort before we're asking a clinical question. And this is looking like we're collaborating in real time. And this is looking like putting the preceptor in the position of educator. So the way that I like to phrase things like this is something along the lines of, I was looking this up last night, and between YouTube and reading between these sources, this is my understanding, but I'd love to hear more about this. Or another way to say something along those lines is, I was looking this up last night, and as I was reading about this case, I was a little confused about this element. What is your understanding of that? This is showing that you're not lazy, but you are looking for their input. And people typically really like to teach, but they want to know that you're trying and that you're putting in an effort. This really also ties into, this is all just like communication rolled into one. As like an absolute beginner, how I'm just trying to focus on being a clear communicator to my preceptors in the operating room. Another thing is to, when you're receiving feedback and education from your preceptors, not to just immediately default to, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for existing and breathing and being in your air. Oh my gosh, don't say that. Instead of sorry, try to shift your thinking to reframe it as gratitude. So if they even push you out of the way, then they take over and intubate, say, thanks for the opportunity to try, instead of sorry, I didn't get the airway. Another example would be they correct you about something, and instead of saying, oh, sorry about that, say, oh, thank you for explaining it that way. This is putting them in the position of educator, and it's also putting you in the position of learner, and it opens up the realm of communication even more because they know that they're going to feel comfortable educating you and offering their knowledge and expertise. And then it's also putting you in the position of taking that feedback, and it also like helps them trust you more at the end of the day. So the more that we can just work on this communication so that we can be really just recipients of all the knowledge of all these amazing clinicians who come before us, the better it's going to be for them, but also the better it's going to be for us, because we're going to get all these little pro tips from people all the time. And then because we use good communication, eventually we'll get a longer leash, but we're not there yet because we have to get to year 3 first. Lesson number 10 is that you can and should prioritize your own health and wellness in CRNA school. The biggest thing that is going to help you with this is time management. I am a huge Google Calendar person. I would be happy to demonstrate how I set up my Google Calendar every single week. Comment if that's something that y'all would be interested in. But in anesthesia school, at least during didactic, I can't speak to clinical yet, you absolutely can schedule time for friends, significant others, hobbies, and then physical and spiritual, mental well-being. This is absolutely doable. This is doable because you are utilizing science-based study tips, so you're not overstudying and being inefficient with your time, but you do have to schedule that time in for yourself. I also can't speak to people who have kids. It's very possible to have children in CRNA school, but I also acknowledge that people who have kids, a lot of any of their hours that are not taken up with studying are taken up with childcare. If you're in a position like I am where you do not have children, you definitely can incorporate time for hobbies, time for working out, time to see friends. And I really believe that so much of this is viewing anesthesia school overall as an opportunity for personal growth and development, as well as professional and educational development. It is such a beautiful process. I overall would say CRNA school is something that I'm very much enjoying. I enjoy CRNA school more than I enjoyed nursing school, to be perfectly honest. Please comment the questions that you have and subscribe and help me out and come back and watch the next video. I am so appreciative to y'all, and I'm excited to hop into year 2 of CRNA school.